One of the most interesting things that has happened in recent weeks is that Aliko Dangote has announced or is quoted saying that he is interested in building a refinery in East Africa. And when you consider his proposal, where he is saying that he would be interested in building a 650,000 barrels per day refinery in the coast of East Africa, that becomes not just something that you would ignore. It is very big news because he is a person who has invested in such a refinery in Nigeria, which is already operational. And the fact that he is suggesting such a refinery in East Africa shows that he is intent in not only becoming part of the solution when it comes to petroleum sectors in Africa, but he is also providing an opportunity for countries in Africa to process their oil and gas resources. If this is the first time that you and I are meeting, I am Joe, and on this YouTube channel, I talk about oil and gas and the opportunities that you can be able to get in the upstream oil and gas sector. I have a newsletter where I share more about this, insights and opportunities that you can be able to get. And if that's something that you would be interested in, find the link in the description below and join the community. And the idea that the refinery would be hosted or located in Tanga made a lot of sense because to many, with Uganda being able to export its crude oil through the port of Tanga, having a refinery would probably have given them an opportunity to also continue adding value to their resources. But at the same time, Dangote has indicated that he probably would prefer hosting it in Kenya, either Mombasa or the new upcoming port in Lamu. And I think that also makes a lot of economic sense, given that, Kenya has a deeper port, it has an infrastructure that would support such kind of an investment, and also as a gateway to the East African and Central African market. So the Dangote refinery in East Africa would be a welcome investment, would be a welcome idea. And I don't know what you think about it, whether it makes sense to you or whether it does not. And when you consider the amount of crude oil being produced across the East African countries, you might think that 650,000 barrels per day is an overkill, is an overinvestment, that is excess capacity. But I also want you to consider that there are other countries in the world that has built their oil and gas hubs without being oil and gas producing nation themselves. And a good example here would be Singapore. So it is okay if such a refinery was actually built in East Africa. It would process some of the crude oil being produced in the region, as well as be able to serve, or be able to get supplies or feedstock from other countries that do not have that kind of an investment. And in the long term, I think that's the direction that, Kenya as well as African nations need to take. Build infrastructure that will help solve the petroleum issue, the petroleum product issue, but at the same time, being able to give them energy security, not being reliant on, factors that might affect the supply of petroleum products to their countries. If you ask me, I actually think oil and gas producing countries in Africa should at least have a refinery that can be able to process petroleum products that they use domestically. That would probably solve a lot of problems that we have at the moment. And Nigeria has been an example. For very many years, Nigerians were queuing to actually access petroleum products, yet they are one of the largest oil producers in Africa. The Dangote refinery in East Africa is estimated to cost about 17 to 20 billion dollars. So that would be a very huge investment. And I think as a Kenyan and as an African, that's an investment that is welcome and probably something that will take a while before it takes shape and becomes a reality. As we discussed this proposed Dangote refinery in East Africa, it is important to realize that there are a number of benefits that come with such a refinery. And yes, it will take a while before this idea turns into a reality. But even as we wait for the progress of this particular idea or concept, I want to mention 3 benefits that would actually be very good for East Africa and also for Kenya. The first one is economic. Having a refinery in the region and in Kenya has a lot of economic benefits. And this can be narrowed down to such issues as, having energy dependence. There will be creation of jobs during that entire construction process. There are businesses that would actually get contracts to supply goods or services during the construction of the refinery as well as after it is complete. And you're looking at all these as benefits that you would get or benefits that East Africans and Kenyan would get if this project was to take off. You cannot forget the financial benefits that the government would get in the form of the revenues it would collect from the taxes it would charge during the entire construction process, as well as an ongoing revenue collection when the facility is operational. Such revenues collected from taxes would definitely help the local government to provide further services to the people in Kenya and as well as to the people within the region. The second benefit that you would get from having the Dangote refinery in East Africa relates to the fact that, as I had mentioned, the region would have an opportunity to actually process or be able to turn the crude oil into finished petroleum products. And that entire process of refining crude oil into finished petroleum products is actually a value-adding activity. It is a form of creating value or adding value to the raw products that are being produced in the region. And this is something that I would actually mention here that, a country like Uganda had already seen. They have seen the potential of such kind of value addition, which explains why they are also building a refinery. And while it might be smaller as compared to the Dangote oil refinery in East Africa, at least they are able to capture some of that value and retain that value in country. And that's the same thing that a refinery that Dangote would build along the Kenyan coast would actually bring. We are talking of being able to turn crude oil into products that you use on a day-to-day basis. Things that are used in transportation, things that can be used when it comes to power generation, as well as other consumables. And that's the whole idea when people talk about adding value to the things or the products that are actually being produced in Africa, and in this case, within the East African region. You want to be able to ensure that the crude oil that is being produced in this region adds value or has some added value before it gets to the market, while still providing solutions to the energy needs within the region. The third benefit would be the rise of the petrochemical industry. And this is because when you have a refinery, it becomes the source or the source of the feedstock that goes into the growth of a petrochemical sector. And this is because some of the things that are actually byproducts of the refining process are actually things that are very important or become the raw material towards building of petrochemical products. And when I talk of such things, I'm sure you have come across in your either day-to-day living, come across plastics, come across, you use tarmac load, and these are things that come out of crude oil refining. So having a refining capacity or a refining facility in East Africa, and in this particular, the Dangote oil refinery within the Kenyan coastline, would be a good foundation to the growth and development of the petrochemical industry in East Africa. And that would actually end up helping the entire region and even Kenya in particular to not only create jobs, but also generate more revenues and provide opportunities for the people within the country and within the region. This is going to be it from me on this particular topic in this video. If you'd want to learn more about the oil and gas industry and the opportunities that you can be able to get, watch the video on your screen right now. Subscribe to this YouTube channel if you have not. And I'm going to see you in my next video.